The Citadel Code, the philosophy of the medieval knight and noble. Chapter 5. Piety, the sacred anchor. Piety formed the sacred anchor that steadied the knight and noble's entire existence amid the storms of medieval life. It placed every aspect of his armored world under the sovereign authority of God. Without piety, courage could become brutality, honor could harden into pride, and loyalty could devolve into blind ambition. With piety, the knight's sword became more than a weapon of steel. It served as an instrument of divine justice against chaos, tyranny, and unbelief. In the cold stone halls of the Citadel, where wind howled through arrow slits and banners stirred faintly in the draught, piety reminded the knight daily that he was not his own master, but a servant of a higher king. The foundation of this piety rested in unwavering Christian orthodoxy. The knight and noble lived in an age when faith was not a private opinion, but the very framework of reality. He believed the universe operated under God's providence, and that earthly order mirrored the celestial hierarchy of angels, saints, and the divine throne. Feudal ranks, king above lord, lord above knight, knight above peasant, reflected this heavenly structure. To rebel against rightful authority was not merely treason, it was an offense against the divine pattern itself. This conviction gave the knight's life profound meaning and restraint. He did not fight for personal glory alone, but as a defender of Christendom, upholding the faith against pagans, heretics, or invaders who threatened the church. Daily life inside the Citadel revolved around religious observance. The knight rose before dawn for the first prayers of the day. He attended Mass in the Citadel's private chapel, often still wearing mail or with his sword laid reverently upon the altar as an offering. The chaplain's words during the liturgy, Domine non sum dignus, echoed in his mind, reminding him of his own unworthiness despite his strength and status. After receiving the sacrament, he would kneel in silent prayer, dedicating the coming day's labors and potential battles to God's glory. This ritual was no empty formality. It anchored his soul before the demands of training, governance, or war tested his character. Piety shaped the knight's understanding of victory and defeat. On the battlefield, when lances splintered and war cries rose beneath fluttering banners, he fought with ferocity, yet never claimed sole credit for triumph. Victories were attributed to divine favor. The knight gave thanks in the chapel immediately afterward, offering captured standards or spoils to the church. Defeats, however bitter, were accepted as trials sent to refine the soul, much like gold tested by fire. This perspective prevented despair during long sieges when food ran low and enemy engines battered the walls. Instead of cursing fortune, the knight turned to prayer and penance, trusting that God's will ultimately prevailed. Such faith sustained morale within the Citadel when hope seemed lost. The ideal of the Miles Christi, soldier of Christ, stood at the heart of knightly piety. This concept gained particular force during the Crusades, when the Church called upon knights to recover the Holy Land. Pope Urban II's speech at Clermont in 1095 framed the crusade as a holy pilgrimage combined with armed service, promising spiritual rewards for those who fought with pure intention. The knight and noble embraced this calling. He saw his role not as mercenary, but as defender of the faith. Even in European conflicts that were not formal crusades, he often viewed his cause through a religious lens, defending the church's rights, protecting monasteries and pilgrimage routes, or upholding Christian rulers against threats. The cross on his surcoat or shield was more than decoration. It proclaimed his allegiance to Christ above all earthly lords. Christian orthodoxy also guided the knight's moral conduct in war and peace. Piety demanded mercy where justice allowed. After a victorious siege, he might spare the lives of surrendering defenders who had fought honorably, especially if they agreed to ransom or conversion. Wholesale slaughter of civilians was discouraged by the code. though the brutal realities of medieval warfare sometimes tested these limits. Charity flowed naturally from faith. The knight ensured alms were distributed to the poor sheltered within the citadel during times of famine or invasion. He supported the chaplain and chapel upkeep, endowed masses for the souls of fallen comrades, and sometimes granted land to religious houses in gratitude for divine protection. Piety further acted as a check against the dangers of pride and vainglory. A knight who won renown in tournaments or battles could easily succumb to arrogance. Daily prayer and confession reminded him that all prowess came from God. Success belonged to heaven. The knight was merely the instrument. This humility preserved his soul and maintained discipline among his men. In the great hall, when minstrels sang of heroic deeds, the pious knight would redirect praise upward, insisting that God alone deserved glory. Such restraint elevated him above common soldiers and prevented the code of chivalry from degenerating into mere boasting or self-glorification. The integration of piety with martial life transformed the knight's vocation. Trading with sword and lance was not secular exercise, but preparation to serve God more effectively. Horsemanship, strategy, and physical conditioning became acts of stewardship over the gifts God had granted. Even the design of the citadel reflected pious intent: chapels built into towers, crosses carved above gateways, and relics housed for protection and inspiration. During sieges, the knight led processions within the walls, invoking saints and the Virgin Mary for deliverance. Faith became the ultimate defense when stone and steel reached their limits. Historical examples illustrated how deeply piety anchored the knightly ideal. William Marshall, the renowned English knight, balanced fierce battlefield prowess with genuine devotion. He founded religious houses, went on pilgrimage, and died in the habit of a Templar. Godfrey of Bouillon, leader of the First Crusade, refused the title King of Jerusalem out of humility, accepting only Defender of the Holy Sepulchre. These men embodied the Miles Christi ideal, warriors whose swords served the cross. Ramon Llull, in his book of the Order of Chivalry, explicitly stated that the knight must love and fear God above all, defending the church and widows and orphans as part of his sacred duty. Piety also influenced the knight's relationships and governance. He treated his lord with reverence, not only out of feudal obligation, but because authority derived from God. Toward his family and vassals, he practiced charity and justice informed by Christian teaching. In the Citadel's solar or great hall, he might discuss theology with the chaplain or listen to readings from Scripture and the lives of saints. These moments reinforced that his armored life was a holy vocation, not a profane occupation. Even courtly love, with its emphasis on purity and devotion, often drew inspiration from veneration of the Virgin Mary, blending romantic refinement with religious sentiment. In an age of constant uncertainty, plague, famine, invasion, and political upheaval, piety provided stability. The knight knew that earthly citadels could fall, kingdoms could crumble, and fortunes could reverse in a single battle. Only faith in God's eternal order remained unshakable. This conviction gave him courage to face overwhelming odds and humility to accept whatever outcome divine providence decreed. It prevented the philosophy of chivalry from becoming a purely secular code of honor, and kept it firmly rooted in transcendent truth. Through piety, the warrior was elevated. The knight and noble no longer fought merely for land, title, or renown. He fought as a soldier of Christ, defending the faith, protecting the innocent, and upholding the divine order visible in the feudal world around him. His daily prayers, attendance at Mass, acts of charity, and dedication of his sword transformed martial existence into something sacred. In the torchlit chapel of the Citadel, with weapons laid upon the altar and the Latin chants rising toward the vaulted ceiling, the knight found his true strength, not in steel alone, but in submission to God's will. Piety, therefore, was no mere accessory to chivalry. It was the sacred anchor that prevented the entire code from drifting into pride, tyranny, or meaninglessness. It unified courage with mercy, loyalty with justice, and personal honor with eternal purpose. Without this religious foundation, the knight would have been little more than a skilled brute in expensive armor. With it, he became a living embodiment of the ideal that true nobility flows from alignment with divine order. In the stone citadel, where faith and steel met, piety ensured that strength served a higher calling, and that the medieval knight and noble walked his path not only as warrior, but as servant of God.